This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.
Hello, my name is Sarah Kelly. I'm Australian, living in Melbourne, and I was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2021. My type of tumour or brain cancer is an anaplastic astrocytoma, which essentially means grade 3 brain cancer. My initial symptoms were just that my left hand just stopped responding as it normally would. I just thought maybe I had RSI. I was doing a marketing job, which is mostly admin, doing lots of typing. And I thought, maybe I just need to do some hand exercises, strengthening stuff. Maybe it's like arthritis, something like that. So I hadn't thought too much about it. But then I was doing a little online music program with my daughter because we were in lockdown and none of the in-person programs were running. And I was trying to do the Mother Duck song. Basically, you do this with your hand. So it'd be like the Mother Duck beak and the rest of it. So this, I could do it with this hand. And I just, even now, I could not get my thumb to connect with the rest of my hand. Mother Duck, right? I've just got, something's wrong. Like I just got that sense that like this is not normal, and I haven't ever had anything like this before. Well, actually become a bit more significant, but a facial droop on the left-hand side of my body as well. So when I was drinking, and even now I dribble out that side of my mouth, and when I was running, I've always thought that I was just a bit clumsy, but then knowing now that was probably part of it as well. So then I followed up with my GP. I had booked in to a neurologist, but the wait lists were insane and I was in lockdown. So she just said to me, okay, you've got to get into an MRI like as soon as possible. And then my hand just completely stopped working. So we knew that something was quite serious. And having had the MRI, they called me first thing the next morning and said, can you please come back? And I thought, this is not good. They said, we're so sorry, but to go to emergency and you've got to go straight away. I think I was just in shock. I think it just hadn't sunk in any form. Like I just literally heard the news and then immediately went to practical. Okay, so got to have someone with my daughter. I really want my husband to come with me. I was just going to the practical, call Steve, get Esther looked after, and then I was saying to Steve, can you please pack like books, iPad, just stuff to wait in while we were in hospital. I had to call my parents first to say, can you please come and look after our daughter? And then I called my husband and said, look, you're going to have to come with me to hospital. I think you need to drive me. And yeah, following my diagnosis, which as many of you would know, is quite devastating, worked through that as time goes on. But I do remember that quite clearly and not being emotional at all until I actually saw the image. And then it started to feel a bit more real, and watching my husband's reaction to it all, that was fairly intense because that was making it sink in more. And so they admitted me straight away and was on the ward, on the neuro ward, waiting until they had a spot for me to have my surgery. It was a little bit of a whirlwind because I went in and I think I had like maybe 3 days on the ward and was able to, even though we were in lockdown, I couldn't have any visitors come in, which was pretty hard, especially given that you're going in for brain surgery and they have to say all the things. So you might be paralyzed, you might not survive the surgery, you might come out with all kinds of side effects or issues after your surgery that you don't necessarily anticipate. So hearing all of that and trying to get your head around the fact that I couldn't even see my husband or my daughter and say goodbye potentially was all pretty tricky. I am a Christian and I just feel like my faith was quite important at that point. I definitely felt like I'm not going to die. For me, that felt like my faith was just a bit of a bedrock. It's kind of like, I don't think that this is it. I don't think this is my time, and took that in. But yeah, they took me into the operating theatre. I remember being wheeled in through the big doors that we open up and wheeled in. I was all prepped for surgery, and they took me in, and then I had to wait because they had an emergency that the surgeon had to then, or the theatre, I think, was then busy and occupied. So I had to then wait for another hour or so just in the bed. But I do remember being rolled in, and it's probably going to be a little bit of an in-joke. I don't know if this is a thing. But we had an ad in Australia at the time, which was, it just was one of those ads that just was randomly just really clever and really funny. And it would come on all the time. And my husband would joke with me because he said, do you think you'll ever stop laughing with this ad? Even though I've heard it probably hundreds of times. And it's an office setting, and they say the office buddies who eat lunch together. And there's this one who calls out, "Wish sushi, Carol." Hilarious Indian accent. And it just made me laugh every single time. And I remember as I went through the doors into the actual theatre, somebody said that, one of the orderlies who was pushing the sushi, Carol. I would have burst out laughing. And I thought that was a real gift. I feel like that was a God moment of, you're going to be all right. You can laugh your way through whatever is going to come. And to be honest, it's been that way. I feel, we should get sushi. I remember being really rudely awoken, like shaken awake, and them saying, push on my hand with your foot as hard as you can and flex it back, and push my hand and flex it back. And could I do some basic cognitive thing? What's your name? What's just happened to you? Like those kinds of questions of just trying to assess, mostly for my left hand function. Was I paralyzed? Was I not? That happened all through my recovery. So I think every 6 hours or something, they'd come in and retest all of the left-hand side function. So I got pretty used to that. And then the other thing that I noticed was that when I came out of the anesthetic properly, and I was very hungry, I went to eat, and I had no idea that they actually dislocate my jaw to do from my surgery anyway. So I didn't know that was going to happen. And so I went to eat some cereal, and I was in so much pain, like agony. I cried out, I think, just because I didn't realize that opening my jaw was going to hurt that much. And that did come good, but I've never had the same bite again. So I had to have quite a bit of dental work done because I could only chew on one side of my mouth. So that was like an ongoing, just weird thing that they didn't tell me about, or maybe they didn't know until they got in there that they were going to have to do that to access the tumour. So that was just a bit bizarre. I'm on 3 different anti-seizure meds, but I do also have an acquired brain injury that just affects. It's not too bad. I'm very grateful. It could be a lot worse. So I did do occupational therapy, which was hand specific or upper limb specific, and they were pretty incredible, using like neurostimulus. So they were aiming to stimulate the neuro pathways that had been affected by the surgery or the tumour. And so in order to get my fingers actually working again, that was a huge help. And then when I began to, it had been so long since I used it properly that it had just like contracted. So it was like a claw. I don't know if you can see that I was stuck in this kind of position. So even just to be able to straighten them out. And even now, my pinky and my thumb are the longest to really. So my pinky is still quite bent and I can't really get sorted. But I can use my hand, and I'm slowly learning to type again. I'm slowly learning. I'd really like to be able to play guitar, but that's still a bit of a wait down the track. But incredible work that they did to get that kind of up and running. They used all this robotic technology to kind of straighten everything out and get those neural pathways happening. But I had a foot drop as well on my left-hand side, which basically just means that it's not that noticeable, but when I'm tired, I tend to drag my left foot. It was 2 months that I was waiting to get the results. So 2 months of that anxiety, just not knowing. And my recovery from the surgery had been so good. I felt so well, like the actual scar itself healed really well. That I had said to Steve at one point, there is no way this can be cancer. I feel too well for this to be something that serious or that sinister. But then, sure enough, 2 months later, they ended up telling me on the phone, because I've been in for so many appointments where they just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you waited for 4 hours, but your results aren't ready," whatever it was, time and time again. So I just said, in the end, they called and they said, "We've got your results. We come in for an appointment." And I just said, "No, tell me now. I need to know. Tell me over the phone." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." I had on speakerphone. He said, "I'm really sorry, but you've got grade 3 brain cancer." And so I said from there, it was just all the practical steps. We don't do it here, so we'll refer you on to this hospital. And then I moved all my care over to them, and they've been where I go back to do all my MRIs and where I do my chemo. My oncologist is there, my neurologist is there, and they've been wonderful. So I had 6 weeks of radiotherapy and then a whole year of chemo, which is the temozolomide, the tablet version of chemo. Radiotherapy I found was actually I coped with that really well. I didn't feel sick. I didn't feel too fatigued from it, maybe a little, but the main thing for me is that the hospital where I was doing it is an hour away, or sometimes an hour and a half, depending on traffic. And I couldn't drive because I was having seizures pretty regularly. So I had to get somebody who was willing to drive me there. So it was 5 days, like every weekday. I would say 5 days in a week, drive me there, drive me home, and then wait while I had my appointment. And the appointment itself is only a couple of minutes. At that time, we were still in lockdown. So you have to go in, you have to do your COVID test and wait for the results. And then you can go down, have the actual treatment, and then you pump out. And then you do a huge drive home. So I think for me, I was actually just fatigued from the travel. But just a quick little side note there. We often say it takes a situation like this to really highlight lots of things, really. But one of the really beautiful things of going through something like this is that you can realize just how many people are around you and how many people care and want to help in any way they can. So I had a bit of a Facebook group just to keep everyone updated, so I didn't have to have the same conversation over and over about what the latest news was or the updates as they came through. And I just put it out to the group and said, hey, I need 5 drivers, ideally one day a week, so a bit of consistency, even just my own head to get around having different people. And I had to say to sorry people, I'm sorry, I've actually got enough. So it was a huge ask to people to do that, I felt like. And I was absolutely overwhelmed with people who were just like, Sarah, I'd so love to spend that time in the car with you. And I was just, it was just the most beautiful boost and a really crappy time to say there are a lot of people around who really want to help and do what they can. So that was lovely. My chemo was pretty awful. So temozolomide is what I was on. And it just made me feel awful. I found the interruption to life, I think, the hardest. Like it was obviously made me feel really unwell, and that was difficult. But it was like, because I was home and I just needed to be in bed, and I really struggled to get out of bed for the week that I was like, it's 1 week in a month that you're on the tablets. So for that week particularly, but then it would hang over. So then it would be like half of the next week as well. And then the anxiety leading up to it would then last for at least for a week as well. So really it was a good 2 weeks in a month that you were pretty much just not at all present. Like for me, I wasn't. And I really mourn. I feel like I lost a year of my life, which in the scheme of things, like I'm still alive and that's awesome. That's worth celebrating. But that was particularly hard at the time, was that I was so unwell that I just felt like I would hear, particularly for my daughter, because she was only 18 months when I was diagnosed. So I think by this stage she was 2, maybe 2.5. I just missed a year of her life, and it very crucial in my eyes, year of her life of development and beautiful things to witness and be a part of and wanting to be involved with. But so I was home, so I'd just be in bed and I could hear like my husband and her interacting, or with my mum interacting, and her just chattering away and thinking, I wish I could be a part of what they're doing or what they're going out to do today. And I just couldn't. Like I had no energy for it. I felt terribly sick. I was having a lot of nausea and vomiting, and yeah, I think that was the hardest part. Like being sick was pretty awful, but just feeling like that was a real robbed time of my life that I hadn't necessarily anticipated. And then following on from that, because it was I'll cut that story short, because we had lockdown and I had my maternity leave and then I extended my maternity leave. But basically I had no nights away from my daughter until I went into hospital. So the whole her whole world and my whole relationship with her completely turned upside down because of what had happened. And had this little bit of a respite in between before I started radiotherapy and everything just felt really normal. But then we had the diagnosis and the prognosis, which kind of just hit us really hard. And I think she felt that too, even though she's a bit young to understand. But we had a month where we didn't play any music in the house. There was definitely no laughter, or the whole place just felt incredibly heavy and dark. When I did come out of the whole kind of craziness, awful fog of chemo, I felt like we had very little relationship. I had to work very hard to re-establish and rebuild my connection with her, which is, again, just makes me feel so sad because I'm her mother and I felt like I didn't know her and she didn't know me. So that was difficult too, but very pleased to say I got my license back. And we'd gone long enough without seizures. I was able to get my license back and I was able to drive again. And we went on so many adventures and I just found as much quality time as I could in with her. And we're totally back to normal as a family now. I feel like it's really balanced. It's about parenting and our input and the relationship that she's got with both my husband and I. That's really worth celebrating. In between months 11 and 12 of chemo, so we looked around for an integrative oncologist who could maybe look at a little bit broader about my health in general. I needed somebody to help guide me in the right direction of looking at my case as an individual case and saying, okay, we know you've got a brain tumor, we know you've got brain cancer, we know what you've been through, what treatment you've had so far. We know what side effects that's had, but I really wanted more options of other things I could be doing. And I was really open to whatever people wanted to suggest. So the place that we found, there's a place in Australia in Byron Bay. It's very cool. I hope they end up having lots more of these types of health retreat setups because it's a unique concept in that we don't have anywhere like it that I know of elsewhere, but also such a cool concept. They have a whole, it's a medical centre, so it could be your GP who you can see at this particular centre. So they have a whole range of alternative therapy specialists, and then they have people like osteos and physios and OT and massage therapists and psychologists, and they have nutritionists, naturopaths. Got this amazing team of people, and then they've got for me, it was some of them I had to Google what is kinesiology or what is, I don't know, acupuncture, but yeah, there's a few that were a little more out there for me. But at that point, I'm like, I'm just going to give everything a go. And it was incredible. I did a big fundraiser here. My running community got around me and said, we want to do this for you. There's one crazy friend of mine who did a 24-hour run. Did all this fundraising kind of stuff around this festival of the 24-hour run. And they raised enough money for all three of us to get up to Byron Bay and the 12 or so grand it cost to do the 10-day live-in retreat. And then I had 10 days worth of treatment with all of their different health professionals. I think the thing that really sets them apart is that they work collaboratively. So they look at my case and I saw their meetings, and they would get in a room and they have a big whiteboard at the front of the room. And they would say, okay, what do you think she'd benefit from? So they tweaked my program even while I was there. So you could do an extra osteo session to work on your jaw, whatever it was. So it was an incredible experience. And I came home feeling really empowered that I was about to finish chemo, but yet I had a plan of what I could then do from there that was going to put me in almost, not necessarily cure my cancer or shrink my tumour, but I just felt so good within myself to know that I was doing the absolute best thing I could do for my body. The biggest thing that they introduced, the biggest impact thing that they did was introduce me to the ketogenic diet, which my neurologist had said to me for a while, Sarah, you need to get on this diet. I went on the diet and I have not had a seizure since I went on the diet. So I think it speaks for itself. For me, 2 years since I had my last seizure. Yeah. And I think the research is slowly catching up in terms of, so my neurologist, he's pretty incredible. He's the head of epilepsy at one of our major hospitals in Melbourne. And he's a huge believer in the ketogenic diet for treating epilepsy. So he, particularly in children, he's seen incredible results, which is why he'd been saying to me for a while, you need to get on this diet. When I went to the Health Lodge in Byron, then they actually put me on the diet for the 10 days that I was there. So I had somebody doing my meals, and that's what made the difference, because then I could see what it looked like and that it was actually doable, and that the food was satiated. Is that the right word? You know what I'm trying to say? It was filling enough, and it was yummy, and I felt like it was doable. And then, because I haven't had a seizure since, there's no way I'm ever coming off this diet. It's just been so life-changing for the better, and I'm completely committed. I am living really well. I'm healthy and I feel good. I've been doing a little bit of volunteering with the Brain Cancer Centre, where a Brain Cancer Foundation established. I'd been into the Brain Cancer Centre a number of times, but in different capacities, volunteering with their consumer team, which is actually, I won't talk about that because that's a whole other thing, but really cool to go in and see what they're doing and get a bit of a sense of the atmosphere of just excitement and the fact that there's even something happening in the research space which would save our lives, which is incredible. But then I went for this lab tour, and I went and spoke to my federal and state MPs, who I randomly had a relationship with already. So I went in and said, hey, do you want to save my life? Please, can you help me tackle this? And I'm looking for any kind of possibility to speak, to be in the media. I'm up for. I just want to bring as much awareness as possible. I'm doing this event. I am doing some fundraising, so that's an avenue. But what I care most about is advocacy and just talking and letting people know that actually it affects far more people than what we realise. And it is all on my Instagram and Facebook if you end up going back and having a look at it. And you can see, I feel like when I watch it back now, you can see the trajectory of, hey, I'm heading on the train, I'm going into this, I'm really excited. And then there's a video of me coming out of the building where the Brain Cancer Centre is, saying, hey, I've just come out, it was amazing, the MPs were incredible, I'm so grateful for their time and the researchers' time. And the one from the next day where I'm just like a broken person. Hopefully encouraging for some of the listeners to hear that, yeah, there are people living with a similar story to theirs, and it's possible to live, and it's possible to live well, but also having a positive outlook has made a huge difference for me. And I think that if we can carry some of that through, and hopefully some of that advocacy, that will eventually hopefully result in better awareness, better funding, better research outcomes for our treatment in the future and the people who unfortunately will be diagnosed in the future, then that would be incredible. Thank you.
This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.